In 1939, a saw wasn't a disposable commodity. It was a carpenter's livelihood, and the tools that they purchased became heirlooms that lasted for generations. Today I'm flipping through this 1939 Disston catalog to show you exactly why Disston's tools were the best at the time, and why their 100-year-old vintage tools still rival their modern equivalents to this day. By 1939, Disston had been at the top of the industry for nearly a century. Henry Disston began his company in 1840, and by 1855, he had become so fed up with the quality of imported steel that he built his own furnace and cast the first crucible saw steel ever made in America. That's the level of obsession we're talking about. He didn't just want to make a saw, he wanted to control every possible detail, down to the recipe for the material itself. This steel is the reason that a 100-year-old Disston saw still has spring and never buckles. It could flex and snap back to being perfectly true, while also maintaining incredible toughness and rigidity. The most notable saw in this catalog is their D95 saw, which they refer to as a masterpiece. For the handle, it wasn't wood. It was listed as being made from the toughest, strongest molded material ever developed for industry. It was streamlined, high-polished, and came in colors like onyx green. And then you have the D15 and the D12, with carved rosewood and applewood handles, nickel-plated screws, and a high-polished blade. These tools weren't just functional, they were beautiful. They had weatherproof finishes to seal the pores of the wood, so the handles wouldn't warp. In this catalog, they also feature their D8 and the D23 saws. These are the saws that built America. The D8 was the original skewback saw, with a both stunning and durable applewood handle. Another example of the high level of quality that Disston poured into every aspect of their tools. And they even managed to achieve this quality while producing at a large scale, with their furnaces pouring 3 to 6 tons of tool steel at a time, which were equipped with pyrometers to control heat with high accuracy, a critical component of their manufacturing process. Disston saws were top of the line for more than just high-quality steel. They were also manufactured with high-precision engineering. Their saws were true taper ground, which meant they ground the blade so it was thickest at the teeth, and tapered thinner toward the back and toward the point. Why does that matter? It provides natural clearance, meaning that the saw won't bind in the wood, even with very little set in the teeth. If they used flat stock, they would have to bend the teeth way out to the sides to keep it from getting stuck. That creates a far more uncontrolled and less precise cut, while a cut with a Disston saw is like a surgical strike. It's the difference between a scalpel and a chainsaw. What really illustrates the scale of Disston in 1939 is the section on butcher saws and kitchen tools. This wasn't just a woodworking company. They provided the edge for the entire food industry. Their butcher saws were built with the same crucible steel standards as their finest crosscuts, designed with a stiffness that ensured every cut was perfectly straight through bone and gristle. They even made specialized tools like the beef splitter and the pork cleaver. When you look at these pages, you realize that in 1939, Disston wasn't just a brand, it was the infrastructure of American life. Whether you were framing a house or preparing a meal, the steel in your hand was likely forged in those same Philadelphia furnaces. And Disston wasn't just about saws, they were also about measuring, marking, and finishing. In 1939, a Disston square was built like a tank. It had a genuine rosewood stock, a heavy brass faceplate to protect the wood, and a blued steel blade. It was as heavy and robustly built as it was accurate. These tools weren't disposable. They were designed to be calibrated and used for decades. But the real heart of the Disston philosophy is found in the back of the book, the files. You see, Henry Disston started making his own files in 1865 for a very simple reason. He couldn't find any on the market that were good enough to sharpen his saws. By 1939, they were making over 250 styles of files. They sold the specific taper files to sharpen saw teeth. And in this catalog, they explain exactly how to joint, set, and file your saw to keep it cutting like new forever. They truly embodied the philosophy that a tool is only as good as the user's ability to maintain it. And they were building a nation of carpenters who understood this. But Disston knew that a sharp saw was only half the battle. So they took that same legendary crucible steel, the stuff that made their saws world famous, and hardened it even further to create a tool that most modern woodworkers have completely forgotten: the cabinet scraper. Before we drowned our projects in sandpaper, using a scraper was standard practice for achieving a glossy, smooth surface on wood. Their number 120 Acme scraper was made of the same steel as their saws, but it was tempered further to achieve extreme hardness. This is what allowed it to hold a razor-sharp edge, even when working through tough, dry hardwoods. When you push this across a board, it doesn't make dust. It peels off a gossamer thin shaving. It leaves a finish that is glass smooth, something a random orbital sander can only dream of. This is the difference between getting it done and getting it right. In 1939, companies like Disston built tools for true craftsmen whose livelihood depended on the quality and durability of their tools. And this is why so many of their tools are still around and in use to this day. So next time you're tempted to buy that saw with the plastic handle at the hardware store, stop. Go find a vintage Disston saw, clean it, sharpen it, and feel the difference. You aren't just buying a saw, you're reclaiming a standard of quality the modern world wants you to forget. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more vintage tool history posted every week.